Thanos might be the biggest, most powerful, and most brutally effective bad guy to ever hit the Marvel Cinematic Universe, but in the comics, it can be a different story. He's tough, but he's been around since 1973, and villains don't stick around that long without taking their share of defeats. From the cosmic-powered heavy hitters to the most unexpected fighters of all, here are the heroes and villains who have handed Thanos some of his most crushing defeats. The Mighty Thor. Since he's arguably the single most powerful member of the Avengers, you'd probably expect that Thor would have the best chance of surviving a one-on-one conflict with Thanos. But in 2000's Thor number 25, the God of Thunder doesn't just survive. He beats Thanos with a hammer until the Mad Titan can't stand up. In a story that involves a trio of all-powerful mystical artifacts, Thanos has Thor outnumbered, outgunned, and completely at his mercy, for a few minutes at least. That was just round one, a distraction to give Thor's dad the time to invest a few more magic items with the full force of the Odin power, ramping up Thor's already considerable strength to a truly world-shattering level. What follows is one of the most savage beatings in Marvel history, and considering Thor once hit an enemy so hard that he broke every bone in his own body, that's saying something. Nebula. Most of the original Infinity Gauntlet story is devoted to Thanos completely wrecking Marvel's greatest heroes, so it's easy to forget that in the story's last issue, he's not the character everyone else is worried about. He even teams up with the heroes to stop someone else who gets her hands on the Infinity Gauntlet and becomes an even scarier threat than he was, Nebula. Needless to say, this is entirely Thanos' own fault. In an act of unparalleled cruelty, Thanos used the power of the Infinity Gauntlet to trap Nebula in her own rotted corpse, keeping her balanced at the very edge of death, tortured until she was nearly mindless. Unfortunately for him, the keyword there is nearly. When Thanos embraced his omnipotence and projected his consciousness out to control the universe, the mind she had left was more than enough to realize a few important things. Like, for instance, that while Thanos' mind had left his physical body, the shiny glove that gave him all his power was sitting right there on his unattended left hand. With that, Nebula grabbed the Infinity Gauntlet, and while she did take her turn at fighting all the good guys, her first action was to send Thanos into the depths of space to drift, endlessly ruminating on his failures. Gamora. The original Infinity War comic was the story that dared to ask the question of what was scarier than Thanos. The answer? Two Thanoses. While a duplicate served as a henchman for the villain known as Magus, the genuine article found himself having to team up with his former enemies in order to stop someone else from doing exactly what he'd tried to do a year earlier. In Warlock and the Infinity Watch number 8, a quiet moment during the big crossover left Thanos and Gamora to decide to blow off some steam, with a sparring match that quickly turned into an all-out brawl. While Thanos was more powerful, Gamora was faster, and put a brutal end to the fight with a bone-shattering nerve strike that would have killed a lesser opponent. The fight ended with the two characters gaining a little more respect for each other, and Thanos knowing full well that Gamora was more than his equal in combat. Gladiator. In pro wrestling terms, the Shi'ar Imperial Guard are what you'd call enhancement talent. For the most part, they exist to be just enough of a threat so that we're all impressed when they're beaten. There are, however, rare occasions when they do get a win, and none of them have been as brutally decisive as this one. To be fair, the fight happened during a time when Thanos was dying, severely weakened by an incurable disease. When he heads to a world within the Shi'ar Empire, the Imperial Guard decides it's time to take advantage and bring him down once and for all. For a while, the lesser members of the Guard are able to hold their own, but when Thanos starts fighting back, they call in the big gun, Gladiator. If you're not familiar with him, Gladiator has the power to do anything he believes that he can do. And in 2016's Thanos number 2, he clearly believes that he can take the Mad Titan down with one single world-shattering punch. Star-Lord. Imagine you're in love with the very concept of death, to the point where you're willing to kill half the universe just so you can ask her on a date. Now imagine that when you die and are finally united with her, a group of outer space cultists bring you back to life, pulling you away from the skeletal arms of your weird goth girlfriend. Keep that in mind, and you'll have a good idea of how pissed off Thanos was when that happened to him back in 2010. Fortunately for the good guys, Star-Lord was packing a secret weapon, a reality-altering cosmic cube that, while broken, still had enough power left for one last shot. Now here's the weird part. Okay, the weirder part. Since he was resurrected from the dead and immediately went on a rampage, Thanos spent this entire fight completely naked. When Thanos finally gets blasted, it looks an awful lot like Star-Lord is unleashing the full force of the cosmic cube directly at his powerfully purple junk. Some random kid from the 70s. Spidey Super Stories was a collaboration between Marvel and the Electric Company, a pre-Sesame Street educational show for kids that occasionally featured the web-slinger. With easy-to-read, goofy stories like Star Jaws, where Dr. Doom built an evil space station big enough to eat the entire Earth, it got pretty bizarre. The issue featuring Thanos might be the weirdest of the bunch. For most of the story, Spider-Man and the Cat are trying to keep Thanos from getting his hands on a cosmic cube. They fail pretty miserably, mostly because Thanos has a helicopter with his own name on the side and the ability to summon a slightly larger than average dog. So when Thanos accidentally drops the cube, it's picked up not by Spidey or the Cat, but by a tween skateboarding enthusiast named Speedy, who commands the grass to tie Thanos up while they wait for the cops. With that, the Mad Titan, the ultimate nihilist, the man who only worships death itself, is handcuffed and taken to jail. Thanos has had some brutal losses in the past, but getting perp-walked because of a 7-year-old is the kind of brutal own that you just don't come back from. Thanks for watching. Click the grunge icon to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Plus, check out all this cool stuff we know you'll love too.